The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 163.
Aye! Don't be scared. All of this is new to you and new can be scary. When people need help, I never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the latest 13th Doctor episode called Praxeus. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Secrets of Doctor Who, where we have great discussions with listeners. Even before we record an episode, we have listeners showing up there to give their first impressions and commentary on the episodes as they air, and it's always a good place. Also where we get warnings to avoid spoilers in case there's a big spoiler. So be sure to check out our Facebook page, and also if you can go on Twitter where we're at SQPN, retweet the show, follow us on Twitter, and leave us comments. All right, so let's talk about Praxeus. This is the latest episode of Doctor Who. We're halfway through this season already, which is kind of surprising. Yeah, more than halfway. All right. So I want to...
Tom, what did you think?
I want to start off with my overall impression. This is another stinker of an episode. We've gone from highs to lows to high to low again. I don't know why this is, but... And it's not that it's another environmental message. I'm fine with hey, be good stewards of the planet that God has given you. I'm fine with that. It's the ham-fisted way that they do this. This felt like a children's after-school special message. Plastics are bad. That's what we start with. And then mix in a whole bunch of Doctor Who tropes, running around and going different places. And then, come up with a message at the end to wrap it all up. And rah. It's a jumble. The plot was a mess. No one is acting according to real human motivation, but they're just doing things because they're puppets in the screenwriter's hands, and because the screenwriter needs them to be here or there for whatever end plot reason they have. And so that's my overall impression. What do you guys think?
How you really feel?
Yeah, exactly.
I was so frustrated because we only get 10 some odd episodes a season, and when you get two stinkers, it's a high percentage. But
Father, what did you think?
I wanted to like this episode.
Yeah,
I really did. And again, it wasn't. I mean, I like the concept of, the companions are going off and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they're each having a role to play and trying to figure out where this is coming from and what's happening. And I really wanted to like it. You almost kind of, CSI, NCIS type, things going on. And it was getting into the environmental message again. Like you said, Dom, the after school special, you almost expected at the end of the episode, like the 1980s, where you'd have this little 30-second snippet with the doctor saying, and this is why environmental, or, why we need to care for our environment, like they used to have at the end, because this was a very special episode. And it was hard. At least it wasn't at Orphan 55 and preaching to the fourth wall. I mean, we can at least say that you didn't have the scene where the doctor is looking right at the camera, and that's why you need to protect the environment from plastic.
I liked it.
Oh, really?
And I'm not kidding. I liked it.
Okay.
I don't mind the environmental message. I don't have to agree with the environmental message. While there is plastic pollution in the ocean, it has been largely overstated, and countries like the UK and America and Europe have almost nothing to do with the problem. If you look up plastic pollution on the interwebs, and Wikipedia has a good page on this, the amount of plastic in the ocean is overwhelmingly, I mean, what problem there is overwhelmingly produced by China, followed by Indonesia, and the Philippines and Vietnam. China alone is 27.7% of the stuff in the ocean. That's more than a quarter of the plastic in the ocean is China. You add in Indonesia, that's another 10%. Both Philippines and Vietnam are more than 5%. That's 50% of the stuff in the ocean is just 4 countries.
And yet,
the vast majority, I'll let you guys have your say. Let me have my say.
I was going to make a joke about it. Go ahead.
And the most of the rest of it is underdeveloped nations that have sea coasts. The United States is less than 1%.
Yep.
Britain is less than 1%. Europe as a whole, now that England is gone, is less than 1%. So the developed nations have their act together on this. This is not a developed nations problem. Right. This is a developing nations problem. And to the extent it's a problem at all. And then they mentioned the other thing, that we have microplastics in our body. I would like to know a time in human history when we didn't have small particles from our food utensils in our bodies, whether it was ceramic or wood or stone or pottery. We have always had that, and we have survived despite it. And we don't have particular evidence that microplastics in our bodies are causing a huge problem. Having said all that, this is a sci-fi show. And was it a little preachy? No more than Doctor Who is on other things, like The Green Death, which had an environmental message back in John Pertwee's day. I can accept sci-fi exaggeration of scenarios as cautionary tales. That's fine. What they didn't do this time, Father, you mentioned this, they didn't preach to the fourth wall. Although there was a line that I would have cut about you're poisoning your bodies and you're poisoning your planet that was preachy, that's the line. It wasn't a big speech at the end. It didn't break the fourth wall. The fact they didn't do a G.I. Joe, and now and that's half the battle thing at the end, is they didn't do that. So I didn't have the problem with this that I did with Orphan 55. There are things that I think are plot holes in this, as there usually are. It's like you've got a time machine, and now you've got control of it, unlike in early incarnations. What do you mean you don't have time?
Right.
What do you mean you'll be back in an hour? You can come back 5 minutes ago. And so there are plot holes, but no more than normal. What I liked seeing the team split up for a reason this time, not just let's all go explore in a dangerous place for no reason. They're actually doing something. There's a reason for them to split up. That makes sense. I liked this in this episode. There is a reason. And because they've got 3 things to investigate, so they split up and investigate them. Right. I like the Doctor showing confidence in the team. It normally takes a lot longer for the team to be this trusted to where the Doctor will let companions investigate things on their own. I liked that. I thought that the episode had a complex structure that I found pleasing. I like seeing more complex things. I liked the off-screen TARDIS hopping that the Doctor was doing through the first half of the episode, where she just shows up and we didn't even see the transport. And it's like, that's nice. That you can do that kind of thing with a time machine. Do that. I thought was exploiting the potential of the show. There were a lot of things that I thought the whole episode had a nice forward momentum, and it had a tense pace. I liked Jodie Whittaker's acting. I thought she was coming across as more serious than normal and more worried than normal. And whenever the Doctor is worried, as opposed to strutting, that genuinely ups the drama. So I enjoyed that. There are, bunches of things I would criticize about it, including things that, I have moral differences with some of the stuff. But the thing overall, I enjoyed. I thought it was a good episode. It wasn't my favorite of this season, but I thought it was a good episode. So take that.
The thing I was going to say, was going to make a joke about The fact that America produces less than 1% of the plastic in the ocean, and yet I still have to use paper straws everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's an example of American political nuttiness.
Yes. Yep. All right. Well, I'm glad that we have different opinions. That'll make this an interesting conversation then as we go through it. So let's talk about the episode as we go. It starts and ends with a voiceover from the Doctor, pretty much basically talking about, Earth, the little blue marble in space, the only one we got, from the bottom of the ocean to the top of the atmosphere, which is where we're going to go in this episode.
By the way, we want to keep our metaphors for Earth straight. It's either a pale blue dot per Carl Sagan or it's a big blue marble per PBS.
Okay, thank you. I will try to keep that straight. So we start with a Soyuz capsule crashing out of orbit.
Which is not a Soyuz capsule.
No.
That doesn't look anything like Soyuz.
No. And it's, why is there a lone British European Space Agency astronaut on this capsule? That's Russian capsule. It didn't make sense. It would normally be multiple astronauts, but that's okay. Well, this is the first of the, for plot reasons, bits of this episode.
Notice that also could be fixed with dialogue. They could have just called it anything other than Soyuz, and it would have been fine.
Right, right. So the could have been a Tesla space, but
yeah.
So then we slam cut to a cop chasing a guy through a store.
A shoplifter,
and it turns out that the policeman isn't really a policeman. He's on sabbatical, working security for the store or something. But it's as if Dirty Harry or what was Mel Gibson's character in Lethal Weapon was take a leave from the police and went to work as store security and was like over eager. So by
the way, I enjoyed this scene because I have done that.
You've tackled a guy through.
I used to be a private detective. Yes, I have tackled people shoplifters in grocery stores.
That's awesome.
I used to be a private detective. Under American law, you do not have to be a policeman to make a citizen's arrest. And I was at one point in grad school hired to pretend to be a shopper for hours a day as part of security for supermarkets. I'd go to different stores on different days and I would arrest people, and it is intense. You never know who's going to have a gun, and sometimes they do. And your adrenaline gets up, and there is a reason that cops smoke after busting somebody.
Yeah. Right. Jimmy just gets more interesting every day, right, Father Corey?
Exactly. Find out more and more about him.
All right, so we have this cop. His name is Jake Willis, played by Warren Brown, who I've seen him in a few other things. I've always really liked this actor. He's really good in mostly action stuff.
He plays a lot of police officers. You look at his CV, and he plays a lot of police officers. Luther might be the one series that people might know him the best for.
Oh, right. He's with Idris Elba. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen him as play a soldier and some other things too. So yeah, I really enjoy him. He's also done a bunch of Big Finish actually, stuff, including a Big Finish series involving Unit. So that's
cool,
interesting. So you might.
He's
find
also to make him more interesting. He was also a world Thai boxing champion.
Was
twice.
he really? Interesting. That makes some sense since I've seen him. Do soldier,
which
film
explains
fighting.
why he is more physical. Obviously, since he's champion of a very physical sport. So
right. So we have this scene of him tackling the guy, and the owner of the store is like, "That's a little too much for somebody that's shoplifting in our grocery store." And then we cut to Peru, where we have some backpackers, two women.
And that's a flaw in the writing, because if you're going to have security to do inventory control, you got to count on some of the people are going to run at some point. And what do you do in that situation? Do you want the person arrested or not?
Right. Why do you have someone being security for your store if you don't want them to do this? Right. So we have Peru. We have these two women who are backpackers. It turns out they're travel vloggers. And
two girls roaming.
And they show up at this supposed to be this idyllic spot on this river in Peru, and it turns out it's a garbage-strewn riverbank, that it's all covered in garbage. And they decide to camp on top of the garbage, like not even like find a spot a little away from the river, maybe that doesn't. Like,
that was not credible. It's like, just walk back up the road and camp somewhere a little further inland.
Exactly. It's so weird.
Well, and it doesn't seem like they're that far away from civilization since they have cell coverage.
Right. They're probably pretty close to Lima or Quito or no, that's Ecuador. Lima or somewhere.
I did like how Gabriella, the one who survives, is like incredulous that the TARDIS crew has never heard of two girls roaming. I love the insular internet bubble that she lives in.
They're YouTube famous and not realizing that doesn't mean they're famous everywhere.
Right. She keeps asking people, I assume you recognize me? Like, nope. Just love that bit. And so the other girl, what's her name? Jamila wakes up in the middle of the night, goes out, and there's masses of crows flying overhead, and a Hitchcock movie breaks out. She gets attacked by the crow. And
I have in my notes, this is basically the Andromeda strain meets the birds.
Right, exactly. And then Jake we go next to a bar where Jake's sitting in the bar and watching the news that this astronaut, Adam Lang, has crashed in the Indian Ocean. And meanwhile, Jake, the not cop, gets a text from Adam saying, "Help me," and he's in Hong Kong. How does Adam send this text?
This is one of the plot holes. We're not given any way for Adam to have sent this text, and especially it's not even from his phone because it's not in the contact info.
Right.
Jake has to ask, who is this? So this is a genuine plot hole. It's a minor one, but it's a plot hole. They needed to give us a line of dialogue about, I got out for a second and used my phone or used a phone I found, and then they grabbed me again.
Exactly, because we presume that he's been kidnapped or by the aliens at this point and is in their control.
One thing I will give them credit for is the phone number has an 852 area or country code, which is Hong Kong. So at least they got that much accurate.
Yeah, that's pretty good that they got that accurate. So back in Peru, Gabriella has woken up and Jamila is gone. Where? How did she go? Like, where did Jamila go? Like, she ends up in a hospital, but like, how does she get from the tent being attacked by crows to the hospital?
They had some line in there, and this is another thing that should have been clearer. They should have more clearly explained what happened, but they did have some line in there about she was seen coming this way or something like that.
She got attacked,
they went into the hospital
and wandered off, and someone found her, maybe.
I guess,
and because if the tent was there, I mean, they would presume they would have woken up Gabrielle. Maybe Gabrielle's a really deep sleeper. Possibly.
Well, she was snoring pretty good, so.
But two girls roaming. I mean, young people, who knows what they're on these days.
Right, those young people. So a dead crow falls out of the sky nearly on Gabriella's head while she's wondering where Jamila went, and then Ryan shows up, who tells her that he's looking into these birds doing their thing, and she doesn't trust him at first. Good for her.
And I liked how she checks him out. I mean,
she even frisks him.
She invites her. She frisks him. He invites her to go through his backpack, which she does. That's reason. Those are reasonable precautions. A little. In fact, they're a little aggressive in terms of precautions, but they're precautions, and I like that. I also liked how Ryan said, "Don't touch the bird." But then, Ryan, you need to take that seriously.
Yeah.
Using a shirt to grab a bird that's infected with a plague is not the best strategy. No. You should have brought some nice latex gloves and a plastic bag from the TARDIS to put the bird in. And you shouldn't have touched the bird when you open it up in the lab later for just a second before you put on the nitrile gloves.
I noticed that. It was a mistake. Also, okay, so then we go back to Hong Kong, where Jake shows up at the location. How long does it take to get from London to Hong Kong?
A day.
I mean,
I guess 15-hour flight. I don't know.
We're playing fast
to get the flight. It's going to be a day.
Yeah, we're playing fast and loose with time here. Yeah, that's the thing. So he shows up there, and Graham and Yaz are there. He's trying to. I like that he's trying to kick down the door, and they're like, "What are you doing? Why don't we try this master key that we have?"
Yeah, which they then don't use on the internal door, so he gets to kick that down. It's like, what happened to the skeleton keys you just used?
Didn't work on that door.
Right. I did like Graham holding the device upside down and not knowing which way the energy reading was coming from when they got inside. And Yaz helps them out. Then we have Madagascar. We have these two people who are working, in this. We found out it's a lab on the beach, and the doctor shows up, and she's coming to rescue this guy who's drowning in the surf in the water. And we'll find out. We keep switching back and forth, but just to kind of close that loop, it's a Navy sailor whose sub went missing in the Indian Ocean.
And he has a severe case of body horror, which is another nice thing in this episode. The body horror was pretty good.
I thought he was going to turn into Tim Shaw.
Oh yeah,
because it's very similar to that that look.
Yeah, what it looks like is little scaly bone fragments are spreading over your skin, so you look like Doomsday from the DC comics.
Right. And then it rapidly grows it reaches some critical mass, rapidly grows all over him, and then he explodes into sand or dust or what have you.
Yep. And of course, the doctor's not worried about developing this contagion based off of whatever remnants are left. So
right. Then let's see, we have Yaz and Graham and Jake. They encounter this guy in a gas mask and full body environmental suit who asks them, "Are you my mummy?" And then, I really feel like they missed an opportunity there for the doctor to say something along those lines.
At some point, the doctor could have. The companions would not have known about that.
Right. Yeah. So they encounter these guys. They get into a gunfight with them, a laser fight, and they find Adam inside, where he's hooked up to some alien energy source.
And he's in a spacesuit that they never take him out of.
Yeah, that was another problem I had. Like, just take the spacesuit off. He's got an undergarment on there. There's a cooling suit that's usually under those. But nope, they drag him around in the spacesuit. And they find him hooked up to some equipment. Meanwhile, Ryan, go ahead.
Meanwhile, in Peru, Ryan and Gabrielle go into a hospital where they find Jamila's body, which is about to explode, but not quite yet. And even though they're going into a hospital, neither of them thinks to get gloves and masks.
Well,
even though they know the birds are infected and they know there's some kind of problem with Jamila, they don't wear gloves and masks. And Gabriella even strokes Jamila's face with her bare hand. And Ryan, with his bare hand, touches her scaly, bony things.
Right. But don't touch the crow. Where is everybody? We have no explanation. Is everybody dead? Have they all turned to dust? Have they run away? And if so, why is there not a guard on the hospital? Like, there is no, again,
there's literally nothing. The place looks like it's completely run down. Like the lights are flickering and lights are out. And it's just,
it was. Is it
maybe they all
clinic?
Virus detonated.
Right. Well, that's the thing is again, I feel like plot jumble, no explanation here.
It's obvious that's what they were trying to imply, but they never actually just flat out said it.
Yeah. And you'll notice we're pointing out all of these plot things that are basically in the first half of the show.
Yeah.
As it's really the first half that they should have given us a little more dialogue to explain what's going on to close some of these plot holes. Once we get into the second half of the show, the plot evens out.
And I think this is where both Dom and I had the idea that this was a Saturday or an after school special.
Right.
Where it was just poorly written. It wasn't so much the message. It was, they just didn't do a good job giving the message.
I was so frustrated by the second half that maybe I had kind of given up on it. Maybe that might be.
Yeah. In terms of poorly written, writing operates on multiple levels. And I think where the writing falls down on this is dialogue fixes to close plot holes. That's because the inner character dialogue I thought was fine. Yeah. The overall structure of the story I thought was fine. It's really it's the things that are going to annoy plot mavens like me is like, wait, why this? And they did close some things. Like one of the questions I had for myself is, if the doctor knew there was alien tech operating in Hong Kong, why didn't she take that assignment and let Yaz and Graham do something else? Because she's the only one who really knows about alien tech. But then they gave us a line of dialogue to explain that, as she did a scan for life forms and there weren't any. Now, that may or may not be a sufficient reason to take a different one. Well, but at least they closed that plot hole. They gave us some reason.
Well, and there was also, she also said she was following the ocean currents of the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean. And it's a little easier to do that with the TARDIS than it is by catching commercial flights and so on. So,
well, and she's presumably dropping them off from the TARDIS in these places. So Ryan calls the doctor when they find Jamila in the morgue. He calls
on his ComDot from the Saranga conundrum.
Yep. We get those back, and the doctor shows up, and Jamila's who's dead. We get more body horror. Her body starts convulsing from the virus. So Jamila, not Camilla. Jamila died, but the Navy guy was alive, and I'm just and Adams is alive. I'm trying to. I don't know why she died.
Well, it's like any other infection. It can continue to eat on you after it has terminated your life processes. Mm-hmm. So it's like gangrene. Different people will die at different points in the gangrene process, but then the gangrene will keep going even after they're dead. Okay. So apparently in Jamila's case, it got to a vital organ and killed her before it hit critical mass and blew her up.
Okay. So then we have this the shootout with the aliens in Hong Kong. Where the Jake and the companions are successful in rescuing Adam and shooting the aliens, and that's when the doctor shows up at the end of that.
And I like that Jake uses the laser rifle to effectively deal with aliens, and we don't have any anti-gun preachiness. So I give this episode props for that too.
She does just throw it away. She doesn't lecture him for shooting at them.
She doesn't lecture us
because they shot first. So Yaz. They're carrying Adam, who's injured, who's ill, into the TARDIS, and then Yaz doesn't go in. She says, "You know what? I didn't get that alien tech that we saw in there. I want to go back and get it. Why don't you come back for me in an hour?" And I'm thinking, why?
You're not thinking four-dimensionally, Marty.
Or why? Yeah. Why do they have to leave? Okay. Oh, right. You guys watch Adam. The doctor and Yaz are going to go in and get that while the TARDIS is here. Like, because where does the TARDIS need to go? Why do they need to go anywhere?
This is something that they could have established better, but they need to get the TARDIS somewhere. Apparently, they don't have, and this is another problem. They apparently don't have. I mean, if you think about it, the TARDIS should have every piece of medical device ever invented.
Mm-hmm. That's another problem I had. Yes,
but you can't make the TARDIS the solution to every problem the show encounters. So they need to someday deal with that about what tech is and isn't on the TARDIS. But the reason they don't have time is they need to deal with these other emergencies, and they need to get Adam to somewhere where they can get him proper medical treatment. And so they end up taking him to the clinic on Madagascar. Yep. And by the way, it's nice to see Madagascar. It doesn't show up in enough fiction. But the problem is they haven't already established that there's a clinic there. But that could have been a dialogue fix, because when the Navy guy washed up on the beach, Suki, one of the researchers on Madagascar, could have said, "Let's get him up to my lab so we can treat him. I've got all this medical stuff there."
Right.
And I've seen, and that would have even been within her interest, knowing what we know about her by the end of the episode, because she's studying the effects of this on humans, and here's a human who's got it. Right.
Again, it's sloppy. I mean, this is part of that sloppiness. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and then the whole thing of for me, it felt like Yaz and Gabriella. For some reason, Gabriella decides to stay with Yaz. That's not given a reason either.
No, they explain that. She says after what happened to Jamila, she's ready to fight something.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, that's right. I think I missed that the first time. So, but there's no motivational reason for them to split apart from that. Like, I see what you're saying, but it just felt like Yaz is staying behind because we need Yaz to be separated from the doctor to do Yaz companion things, and that just felt artificial.
On a plot level, yes, that's part of what's happening, but they do give us an on-screen reason, which is there was this piece of technology that was really valuable to the aliens, and I couldn't get it at the moment. I need to go back and get it now.
No, I get that. It's just why does Yaz need to go alone? That was the thing. And I get what you're saying, because they established that the TARDIS doesn't have a lab, that they need to get Adam right away to somewhere else. I suppose it just felt. We've already talked about that.
You got to have companion separation. I mean,
Yes.
it's that simple. You got to have it. Otherwise, it couldn't advance the plot.
Right. So back in Madagascar, we established that Adam, the astronaut, and Jake, the cop, are a couple, that they were married and are separated. Yeah. And that's just
we get to see Chekhov's microfiltration system.
Right, exactly. And then we see these weird misshapen crows. The here in Madagascar, just like the ones in Peru. I have a note back in Hong Kong. The annoying travel vlogger is still doing. Do you know who I am? Then they see that one of the injured aliens wakes up and teleports out of the warehouse in Hong Kong, and Yaz gets the idea that maybe we should do that too, which seems like a bad idea. But at least they establish the discussion about it.
No worse than innumerable companions doing the same exact thing in Doctor Who history. Let's follow that bad guy into a space we've never been before.
Yes, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, that is pretty standard. And they discuss it. They talk about the dangers, and she talks with Gabriella, and they do it anyway, which is fine. We've seen Rose and Amy and Martha and everyone do that.
Oh, yeah.
So back in Madagascar, this is where I wrote, why isn't the Doctor using some kind of lab on the TARDIS with her much more advanced technology, which is okay. We need to have the Doctor interacting with the world outside the TARDIS. I get that. She asks Ryan to dissect the dead crow. Why doesn't she just use her sonic on it? Oh, it's full of plastic.
Or ask Suki, the qualified medical person who has a lab, to do it.
Right. And then, as we said, Ryan touches the bird with his bare hand.
That's a directing flaw. That should have been. That's a camera thing.
They should have reshot that.
Not in the script.
Yeah. The Doctor finds out that Adam is infected with an alien pathogen, and both Ryan and Graham don't know what pathogen are. I like the fact that they had both Ryan and Graham, because if it was just Ryan, it's the young guy who's too stupid to know what a pathogen is. No. Let's just establish that pathogen is not a word that a lot of people might know, and have the Doctor explain it.
This is one where I had more of a problem, because they should have known what a pathogen is, or been able to infer it from context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But at least it wasn't just like
Graham's. I did like Graham's way of putting that. It's like, I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to look stupid.
Right. I'm just glad it's not just Ryan who's asking because he doesn't know. You know what I mean? I like that.
Also, and so they figure out the pathogen attacks plastic. The Doctor is like, could this be the Autons? Which is the fan question at this moment.
Right.
And she says, no, they don't work this way. They don't use viruses. So that was fine. That was nice. Also, she's banging her skull saying, come on, brains. And they hang a lantern on it. And as Graham turns to Ryan and says, did she just say brains?
I have a note here that Graham gives marriage counseling to Jake, who doesn't do emotion or commitment or foreign travel. And
in other words, doesn't do marriage.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
As Graham says, oh, you're quite a catch, which I thought was actually a funny line.
Ooh, harsh.
Yeah. But we have to establish this B plot about the Jake and Adam's relationship.
Because intersectional representation stuff.
Yeah. Yaz and Gabriella have transported or teleported to an alien location, an alien place, which is a soundstage with plastic sheeting hung over things.
Yeah,
which is fine.
Yaz was way excited about it. I found an alien colony.
Yeah, on an alien planet. No, sorry.
No, sorry.
No.
But they do find a submarine conning tower, which was kind of interesting.
Very X-Files of them.
Very.
Yep.
So I have a note here. This is where they explain about the birds are eating plastic, because the great environmental disaster that birds eat plastic wherever they see it. But the pathogen is attacking the plastic and metastasizing it, making the birds go crazy, I guess. I think that's what we're establishing.
It's gumming up their insides.
And also, making them act weird, I think, is the thing.
Yeah. Also, birds have gizzards, and so they eat rocks and other small objects that they need. It's not just food that it's not just food is not the only reason they eat small objects.
Right. Then there was something, and I got to be honest, I didn't catch this explanation, but something about the birds in Peru and Madagascar combining something that creates a virus that fights back.
Enzymes that break down the plastic also can attack the virus or something. Or
this one went by me quick, and I didn't catch it. And
it did, and I think in part it's because of the accents on the show and the fact we're Americans and are not used to these accents,
right?
Because they have gotten away recently from standard British pronunciation on the show. And, you know, as Americans who watch British TV, we're quite used to BBC English, less familiar with regional accents. And when everybody has a regional accent, it gets harder.
Right. Just like my wife was watching the BBC show Shetland. She watches it with the captions on, even though they're speaking English, apparently.
Yeah. So cut to the chase. It turns out the alien virus is called Praxeus, which is a Greek name. So there was a heretic in the early church named Praxeus, but no apparent relation to this plastic eating stuff. And Suki, with her over-equipped lab, is an alien scientist who is here to study it. And after the doctor realizes that some combination of stuff from the birds in the two locations can fight Praxeus, and then outs Suki as an alien researcher, Suki says, "Thank you very much. You just gave us more information than we were able to figure out for ourselves," and she teleports away.
Praxeus was, something like the one who is right? One who does right?
Well, so the word praxis in Greek is the word for action.
Okay. Right. That's
but
right.
I looked to see, are there other meanings I'm not familiar with that would fit this, and I didn't see any.
The thing that acts.
So I think they picked it because it's got an X and a Latinate ending.
Right. So they back to the TARDIS, although they leave Arumu. Let's talk about Arumu first.
I was going to mention, I didn't catch his name. He's the guy whose name I didn't catch.
Yeah.
And he gets attacked by birds, and that's the last we see of him, and nobody asks any questions about him afterwards.
Yeah, this was another hole for me, because here's this poor guy who gets attacked by hey, you stay out here, even though we have windows in the lab that you could look out. Stay out here and watch the dangerous birds. Okay. Then he gets attacked and presumably killed, maybe, or maybe he runs away, maybe, but nobody seems to care or wonder. And then I'm left wondering, who was Arumu? Was he another one of the alien crewmen? Was he someone hired by Suki of the native people?
It could have been either one, but my guess would be alien researcher, but that's just a guess. They could have and should have, if they're going to include this character, which they really didn't need to, but if they're going to include this character, they should have tied up a couple of these loose ends with him.
I got the impression he was just a local that worked with her. Right. She was using as to help out with the work, but like you said, they don't mention that. You have to basically draw your own inference.
Poor disposable.
And that's the way he's introduced to the viewer. You think he's a local,
right?
It's only in hindsight could he be a researcher.
Poor disposable locals. I hate to say it. So anyway, they get back to the TARDIS with after the birds attack the lab and come in, and all these birds are flying around, but none of them manage to scratch any of them except Suki. In the TARDIS, Adam volunteers to test the cure that the doctor's come up with. The doctor says it's too dangerous. He's dying. This is a fatal condition.
I took that, and I probably would have massaged the dialogue as a writer, but I took that as the doctor is challenging him to make sure he's really committed to this.
Okay.
Because as this is informed consent. She's making him aware that this is really dangerous.
Okay. And then this is the opportunity for Adam to make a brave speech about, about being strong in the face of disaster. And
also a critical note that I had at this point is how poorly designed the interior TARDIS set is, because there's no place for this guy to lie down or sit down or anything. They've got to kind of lay him down against those weird angled floor pedestals.
Right.
Yeah.
With some weird hexagon on the floor that acts as the heart, the ECG. Meanwhile, Yaz finds in the alien colony, quote unquote, finds one of the aliens, so the alien that had teleported out in the gas mask, now dead and now covered in those scales, so infected by the Praxeus,
but
killed.
Not blown up.
Right. So that's weird.
A sign that he's one of the many totally human-looking aliens in the Hooniverse.
Right. Now, the Doctor's now wondering, whatever happened to Yaz, by the way? Let's go find her. And they find her. She's in the alien construct. But it turns out it's actually in the middle of the Indian Ocean, at the bottom of the sea, under giant plastic pile.
Yeah.
The one of these locations around the Earth and the ocean where all the plastic shows up. So, and as you're saying, Jimmy, Indian Ocean, that's because all that plastic comes from
China and Indonesia.
Yeah. Yep. In India. So we're told, we find out from Suki that the aliens were experimenting on humans to find their cure. And again, we don't get a straight out explanation of what happened to Adam, but presumably they snatched him out of space to experiment on him.
So there's a line that goes by pretty quickly about the Doctor here in the Praxeus structure at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. So it's got part of the sub that apparently got entangled in this structure. It has the alien spaceship that landed, right. And we later learn it crash landed. And then the Praxeus virus pathogen got out and created this structure. It grabbed the submarine and killed everybody on board. And the pulses of the ship's engines were what brought down the re-entering space capsule. That it interfered with the capsule's guidance system, and this is pretty impractical. This would not happen. But it was an inadvertent thing that the ship's engines did that brought down Adam in his space capsule, and he crashed and I guess got infected at that point, and then they took him to Hong Kong to their other research facility.
Yeah, why Hong Kong? Anyway,
well, apparently they have to have their land-based research facilities somewhere, I guess, and they have one in Madagascar and one in Hong Kong.
Okay, I suppose.
And then they have their base where their ship crashed.
Why did the alien virus construct this habitable space under the? No explanation. It did.
It did.
Yeah. All right. And they took the occasion of having Adam available to experiment on him. Apparently.
One thing I like is the Doctor gets genuinely scoldy in a good way with the aliens once she realizes what's going on. And it's like, you're using Earth as a petri dish.
Right.
I mean, you're risking destroying this planet and this race just because yours got decimated. And that's legitimate moral outrage. I thought that was fine.
Yep. And Suki took the cure that the Doctor created and it had injected herself. But the Doctor points out that that was a cure intended for human beings, and if you're not a human, it's not going to be good for you. And in fact, maybe. And in fact, it turns out it's not good for her. Presumably accelerated the infection because it kills her fast. She's dead in a second. Then Adam is cured. They find out, yay, we have an antidote and a cure all in one.
And they set that up. The Doctor said, if this works, the TARDIS will make more. And it's like, okay, yes, that's something the TARDIS could reasonably do.
Yes.
Yep. And it was a nice way of problem solving. We didn't have to find some alternative lab that could make miraculous amounts of antigen super rapidly. It's like, okay, let the TARDIS do it. The TARDIS has the advanced technology that could make vast amounts of antiseptic really rapidly.
Although I have to say, this is pretty concentrated stuff because about less than a liter of it covers the entire planet.
Yeah.
So the doctor realizes that luckily this alien ship uses organic fuel cells, which means you can put organic things into it and fill it. So she fills the organic fuel cells with the Praxeus cure, wants to send the alien ship into the stratosphere to disperse the cure into the atmosphere and kill the disease all over the planet at once.
But we're going to have a plot cliche encounter here in a moment, because it turns out that the automatic pilot on the ship isn't fully operational, and someone has to go up with it, and
someone
the ex-cop decides to self-sacrifice.
Yes. He has to die because, of course, when he points out that, oh, this is simple. It's just up, down, left, right. Flying a spaceship is easy.
Sure.
Yeah. But in the nick of time...
Well, with advanced tech, it would be.
Well, this is true. But in the nick of time, the Doctor materializes the TARDIS around him, saving him from the exploding
which
spaceship.
is something that could not happen in early incarnations of Doctor Who, where the Doctor didn't have micro precision control of where the TARDIS could materialize. So you couldn't there. So if you think about other people in the past why couldn't the Doctor use this exact technique to save him? Because the Doctor didn't have this kind of control of the TARDIS.
Right. So we end the episode with the Doctor leaving Adam and Jake, who have, reconciled, and Gabriella in Madagascar for some reason with no
Three
passports.
Idiots roaming. Yeah. Well, no, she volunteers. Yep. She says, why don't we, why don't we all hang out and we'll vlog?
I get that, but she
needs a new partner.
This is somewhat improbable, but it's no less improbable than 1,000 other endings to these episodes where they're left in this foreign country with no passport, no money, no luggage. Gabriella's friend has been dead for a day, but she's ready to move on. You know what I mean? It's just it's TV. I get that. It's whatever. It's just at the end of this,
it
I'm
helps you, Dom, pretend this episode really took 3 months and they just cut out the interesting parts, and that's why it has so many little gaps in the dialogue.
Thank you. That helps me. That does help me. So, and then that's it. That's where we end things with another voiceover from the Doctor, echoing the opening voiceover. So, any other notes on this, Father Corey?
Just, I got a kick out of the fact that the Doctor thought that shower gel can smell like a dead bird.
Yes.
She makes a comment to Ryan. Oh, I thought you changed your shower gel. That's why you smell like a dead bird.
Well, to be fair, Axe body spray pretty much smells like a dead bird. So yeah. Anything else?
Nope.
Jimmy?
So a lot of people in the fan community, and I haven't thought this myself, but a lot of people in the fan community have said, Yaz needs more to do, that Yaz doesn't have a lot to do. And they've been concerned about the 3 companions thing. I think there's no problem having 3 companions. I mean, almost any show, you've got a main character and at least 3 supporting characters that are regulars. So I don't think there's any problem there. I think it's a question of how they're used. And I haven't been particularly bothered by the amount that the supporting characters have been used. But in this episode, Yaz clearly gets to shine, and she gets a lot of agency. I mean, she's the one who decides to stay behind to get this valuable piece of stuff. She's the one who decides to go through the teleport into the dangerous situation. So she's really self-actualizing as a character. Also, I thought this episode was very dramatic. I thought it had a much better show don't tell thing compared to Orphan 55. And it had flaws, particularly on the dialogue plot hole level, but I tend to give things more of a pass, or at least I judge them more leniently if I can think of a line of dialogue that would have fixed it. And in this case, I could largely think of lines of dialogue that would have fixed things. One thing that I had expected after last week was that we might get more on the whole Ruth Doctor thing. Yeah. Because Chris Chibnall had, and I want to talk for a minute about Dr. Ruth, but Chris Chibnall had co-written the previous episode, and the clear reason for that was to write all the sensitive stuff where we're starting to retcon the Doctor's history. And you want the showrunner doing that. And I thought we might get more on that in this episode, since this is also co-written by Chris Chibnall. But we didn't get anything on that.
Yeah.
And that tells me something else, which is likely to explain your two reactions to this episode. Because the other reason, now, showrunners, certainly this is how it is in America, and I'm confident this is how it is in Britain too. When a writer turns in a script, it's not done. It goes through a script editor, and it has to be approved by the showrunner. And so there are changes made after the writer gets his crack at the script. Due to union rules, the writer gets sole credit unless the changes are really substantial, in which case, by the Writers Guild rules, another person gets co-credit. And so apparently Chris Chibnall made such substantial contributions that the Guild rules required him to get a co-writing credit on this episode, because normally he's going to change little things in any script that comes over his desk. But they apparently were so big in this one that the rules mandated he get a co-credit. And that suggests the original script had lots of problems, or either that or Chris Chibnall introduced lots of problems. But it was probably his fixing of an original severely flawed script that caused a bunch of these little plot holes they needed extra dialogue to fix.
Yeah.
By the way, since we brought up Dr. Ruth now, in the intervening week, Chris Chibnall has given an interview in which he said that Dr. Ruth is the Doctor. She's not from a parallel universe. Mm-hmm. And that's why we gave her introducing as the Doctor credit. That's why we gave the actress that credit, the same way John Hurt got that credit when he became the War Doctor. So for reals, this is the Doctor, according to Chibnall. Also, we hope to see Captain Jack in the future, he said, but maybe not this season, which I kind of predicted we might not see him this season. In terms of who Dr. Ruth is, a new possibility emerged in the last week, which I had not initially thought of when we did our review. There is a possibility that she could, I see basically 4 possibilities, none of which is parallel universe. One of them is alternate timeline, but that's too close to parallel universe. I don't think they're going to do that. The other 3 options that I think are much more possible are she's a pre-Hartnell Doctor, or she's a future Doctor that has had her memory of Jodie Whittaker blanked, or she comes from season 6B, the period after Patrick Troughton's Doctor was snatched by the Time Lords at the end of the War Games and before he regenerated into Jon Pertwee, because we don't see on screen, anywhere on screen, the face-to-face transition from Patrick Troughton to Jon Pertwee. And so Dr. Ruth could fit in there. In terms of the problems and benefits for each of these, if she's a future Doctor that has had her memory blanked, she clearly comes from a time after Gallifrey has been restored, and Chibnall only just introduced the idea of Gallifrey being destroyed by the Master. So that would totally take the edge off that really quick. So that seems unlikely. Could she be from season 6B? Well, that would explain why her TARDIS looks like a police box. And the Time Lords could have blanked her memory at the end of this incarnation. Well, no, they wouldn't have needed to blank her memory at the end of this incarnation. But season 6B is so abstruse, most fans are not even aware of it. It's not the easy writing choice to say, let's explain season 6B and have that be where this Doctor is from. And that's the dramatic thing. She's from between Troughton and Hartnell. She's between Troughton and Pertwee. The dramatic thing is she's pre-Hartnell, and there's a whole other cycle of regenerations at least before Hartnell. And she's the timeless child. She's the first Doctor. That's the dramatic thing to go for. So I still think that's what they're going to do. But for that theory to work, we need to explain why is her TARDIS a police box? I don't think that's as hard to explain because she was on Earth. It could have adopted that guise more than once. It's just not broken into that shape yet. It doesn't break until the unearthly child. So if she's on Earth, it could have been a police box. She could have been on Earth for decades. I mean, we know she was on Earth in the 1990s because that's when she moved to Gloucester. So I think that that this is, for my money, still the one I think they're likely to go with, although they could do season 6B Doctor or future Doctor. But those are my thoughts on it at the moment.
My thinking with the TARDIS looking like a police box was that that the fact that it got broken and stayed that way with in Unearthly Child, they're going to explain has something to do with the fact that it remembers being the police box before or something along those lines.
Well, that's assuming that this is the same TARDIS. That it's that it's still the same actual TARDIS versus a different TARDIS. So I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, it could be an entirely different TARDIS because William Hartnell steals a TARDIS. So this could be an entirely other TARDIS if there's a previous regeneration cycle.
Right.
One thing another complication, though, is that Susan says she named the TARDIS. And that line has largely, it's been interpreted a couple of ways. Some people have said Susan took the initials for time and relative dimension in space and made up the word TARDIS, and that's how Susan named the TARDIS. But there's been so much pre-Hartnell Doctor Who stuff or pre-Unearthly Child stuff that they've largely ignored that line, and they have Time Lords talking about TARDISes before Susan.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a mopey, something that's largely we all agreed to forget that because it doesn't make sense in terms of what we later decided to do.
Interesting. So, yeah, I will, to go back to something you said earlier, I will say maybe part of what threw me off with this episode was the expectation that we were going to have to more on this, earth-shattering development about the Doctor that and not having that was kind of throwing me off.
It seemed like I had mentioned for the previous episode where there are the 3 alerts that it was going to be one of these where like the next 3 episodes were going to be 1 alert each instead of all of them being 1, and I think there was kind of the expectation of the expectation that, okay, now we've got the arch for the rest of the season and the rest of the season is going to fill out that arch, not realizing this is actually just a standalone episode that doesn't really have anything to do with that arch at all.
Oh, I watched the Coming Up Next Time, and I think they made it clear they were all going to be all 3 at once. So I was expecting a diverse chase episode hunting down these 3 things.
And immediately I don't watch the next episode teasers, so
I didn't see it either. So yeah, that might also explain different expectations. Well,
yeah, and like you guys, I'll acknowledge there's a bunch of flaws in this. I just like the overall shape of the story. I thought it was dramatically filmed, and so I could enjoy it on that level while still recognizing the flaws.
I'd like the location shooting too. That's nice to get outside.
Spots.
Yeah. I do want to get a little bit of feedback in from our listeners who gave us some feedback on Fugitive of the Jadoon last episode. Amy Flowers writes on Facebook in response to Jimmy saying he doesn't know why Ruth started a fire right away. She says, "I don't know, Jimmy. I was in West Bay, England in May a few years ago, and I was grateful the heat was still on."
I defer to your greater experience.
That's the infamous weather in England.
Well, I was going to say, even living in Montana in May, you're going to need your furnace once in a while.
Right. Keisha Austin Kalin on Facebook writes, David Tennant said in an extra clip during his season, I think she means the season with the Jadoon, saying that the ooh sound was hard for him due to his Scottish accent. And so the rhyme was a joke because it was hard for him to say. So the scriptwriters were trolling David Tennant. They're a Jadoon on the moon, he had to keep saying.
A platoon of Jadoon on the moon.
So
next to a lagoon.
So thank you, everyone, for all of your feedback. We had other feedback, too, but I think we've kind of covered some of the response to that in what you were saying there, Jimmy. So I won't necessarily go through all of that, but we do appreciate all the feedback we get from folks. So as we wrap up, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Nellie B., Lynn Z., Laura R., Donna C., and Pat D. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of Praxeus? We had a diversity of opinion here. What did you think? Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/Doctor Who, or on the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or by sending us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode entitled, Can You Hear Me? Can you hear me now? It won't be a Verizon commercial, I'm pretty sure.
Let's hope.
Until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Yeah, thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, this is why I don't travel abroad.
Right. This is going to be fun.